Did you know that there's a device that can show you exactly how your stress or your diet is impacting your weight, sleep, or energy? Today, we're going to be talking about that device, which is called a CGM. This is a continuous glucose monitor. And now there are over the counter versions available, so you don't need a prescription to have one. And so you can get one yourself and start learning so much information about your body and how to optimize your health. So, Tisa, why don't you tell us what a continuous glucose monitor actually is?
So, what it is it's going to measure our real time glucose. It's going to kind of help us to track our trends and patterns and our post meal responses. So, it can give us an idea of how we respond to our meals and our stress and our sleep. And it's very individualized.
Yes, and this is something that we now have access to. Tisa and I are functional medicine nutritionists, and so we are able to ask our clients to get one of these to learn more about their health. And we're doing this with patients who are not diabetics. So, Tisa, why are non-diabetic patients having to track their glucose, or not having to, but wanting to?
It's a way that we can measure our metabolic health. We can measure our performance. We can help to prevent illness. We can measure stress. We can use it to change our behaviors. It's really helpful for many reasons. And so it's not just for somebody who has diabetes. It really can help us to make sure we don't end up with diabetes, but also to kind of make sure that our body is functioning optimally.
Can it do all of these things? We've think
Right.
about it before as like a way to prevent diabetes. Now we're going to look at it as a way to prevent, health issues and improve our performance. How can a CGM actually do that? What are some of the benefits of it?
I would say the biggest benefit is awareness. It allows us to understand what actually is impacting us when we eat that meal or don't eat that meal or exercise or don't sleep or any of these things that can impact it, it's going to let us know that cause and effect real time, right? What makes things better? What makes things worse? Is something causing us to spike or crash? And so awareness is key. And a lot of times, we might feel off or think something's off, but we aren't sure. And this is going to let us know, yes, this is causing something or it's not causing something, right? And so it gives us that insight where instead of having a single measurement where we're going to the doctor and we're getting one lab from one day at one time, it's going to let us know. Are there trends? Are there patterns? Are there things that are going on? Or was it, again, a single type of an incident? And so it really gives us insight into how stress impacts our blood sugar. And it does. How our sleep, whether it's good or bad, impacts our blood sugar. And it's very individualized because one meal can impact somebody very different than it impacts somebody else. And so it's going to let you know how your unique body handles whatever that meal, stress, or sleep thing is.
Which
And
is
it's
so
another,
important because we have this information about like the glycemic index. Here's something that's like low glycemic. It's not really going to impact blood sugar. This is high glycemic. It's going to give you a big spike. But that's based off of averages. We are
right.
not an average, we're an individual. And so while that's going to apply to majority of people, it might not be applying to you. And that might be one of the reasons why you're stuck. But go ahead with the other
Yeah.
benefit.
Well, I was going to say there's motivation in it because it takes away shame. It takes away, other factors that can impact us. It's data, it's feedback. And so we can say, hey, this didn't go well in my body. What happened there? And I adjust that? Can I change that over time? Can I give myself a different result? And so it also reinforces positive habits, right? When I did this thing, it was better. When I did this other thing, it was worse. And so maybe if I do this more often, things look better, right? Or avoid these other situations. And so it's a really great real time feedback, which is huge.
Yeah, absolutely. So these are all the ways in which it can help someone to customize their diet, their lifestyle to better match whatever their goals are: weight loss, more energy, sleeping through the night, because blood sugar has a big impact on that, our ability to exercise well. And so, a lot of reasons why we want to use it, but what are the reasons why we kind of maybe should be cautious about using them?
Well, it also can make us worried and paranoid and, so we can kind of have a lot of anxiety. So if you're somebody who, gets really anxious about that kind of information, you want to be careful with that. But again, it's awareness. It's really important that it gives us awareness and we want to avoid, being too worried about any one result and having it help us to make little shifts in our lifestyle that are going to allow us to feel better, but also to have more stable measurements.
Yeah, but what are the limitations of those measurements, right? So there's sometimes that using that data isn't actually gonna give us a benefit because the
Right,
data maybe
right.
isn't accurate completely.
Yeah, there are definitely things that can impact the results, right? So exercise is one of them. Levels can decrease when we're exercising. So there's certain times where it's like, oh, this isn't data we want to be looking at or concerned
And levels
about.
can actually increase too, depending on your exercise. So it might kind of, go down based on like where the sensor is, but it also can go up because your body is in a stress state. Right. And so you
Right.
just mentioned stress is something that will increase your glucose. And so I've
Right.
had, patients who got a CGM and then they're like, this is teaching me that I shouldn't exercise. Like that's when my blood sugar is going up. And it's like, you want that. How else are you going to have energy to exercise? Your body
Right.
has to produce glucose in order to fuel that workout. So when you see that bump up, that's a really good thing. It means your body's working well. It means you're going to get a good workout and you have energy. So it's never as like black and white as like higher blood sugar bad, lower blood sugar good.
Right.
We have to
Right.
kind of put that in context of what we're doing with our
Exactly.
diet.
It's more about kind of trends, right? And same, I've had clients that said, "Oh no, it's getting really low when I sleep at night," and you can roll over on it and that's going to impact it, right? And so they're not perfect. They're not perfect. They're tools. There are some medications that can impact it. High dose like Tylenol and Advil can impact it. High dose vitamin C can impact it. So, there's some things that are going to make those results not accurate. And so at any given one time, we don't want to worry so much about that. We want to look at what's happening over time, and that is the information that we really want.
I love that. We don't wanna get too obsessed and be like, "This one day when I was feeling sick and I took vitamin C, it went up, and so now I'm worried." We wanna really
Right.
look at those trends, what's kind of making go up or down that's not related to what I'm doing, rather than seeing it go up and be like, "Oh, I shouldn't take vitamin C anymore."
Yeah.
And so if we have an explanation for why it's going up, we shouldn't worry about it, or why it's going down, those both of those, scenarios. What are so say someone, is listening to this is like, "Oh, I want to customize my diet, my exercise. I wanna see how stress is impacting me. This is amazing." And so I wanna get a CGM. And so they get one. How do they start interpreting the data? What kind of ranges should they be looking at to keep their blood sugar
Right.
markers in? Because these CGMs were made for diabetics, and so it's gonna tell you, "Oh, your glucose is perfect," because it's not a diabetic glucose. So
Right.
you can't use the ranges from the apps or from the lab itself.
Right. So ideally, our glucose is going to be somewhere between 70 and 115 most of the time. We really want to keep time outside of that, or about less than 5% of our day. There can be an occasional spike, and that's okay, or dip, but we really want it again to be fairly stable. We want that morning kind of fasting range to be somewhere between 70 and 90, ideally. But really, we want to avoid the spikes over about 30 points. Those are indicating some dysfunction. So we really don't want those big spikes or frequent spikes that are high, right? We don't want those as well. And we also don't want it to stay spiked for long periods of time. That's another one. When it gets above about 120 and stays there for a while, that's also concerning. So, other things we want to avoid, like big drops after meals, that's going to indicate maybe a little reactive hypoglycemia or higher levels upon waking, which can indicate some stress or some things going on in the system if it's, already raised before we're even doing anything. So, these are things we want to kind of look for.
Yeah, there is something called the dawn effect that you can see in pre-diabetics as well as diabetics, usually not in those with healthy glucose, where oftentimes their highest glucose of the day is right when they wake up. And so that's an issue with their metabolism. And that's just a perfect example of how what you're eating isn't always the reason why your glucose is going up. The body's so much more complex than that. And we get to learn that through biofeedback tools like a CGM.
So, what can we expect when we start using a CGM?
So, first, we talked about some of the benefits, right? We can expect to learn more about how to optimize our diet and our lifestyle, and we can, learn more about the effects of stress. Because I've seen with some clients that their glucose will go up 20 points because of their stress state. And I had a patient who was wearing one because they did have some blood sugar issues, and his glucose went up 50 points because he was running late to a flight. So, I mean, it can really teach you just how much stress might be one of the reasons why you're having abnormal labs or your weight isn't budging if you try to look at and interpret that data that way. But some of the negative effects that can happen when we start using a CGM is that we get obsessed over the data and we get really controlling or we get really concerned. Like we were saying before, when someone takes vitamin C or they're exercising and it goes up, I've actually had clients be like, I'm going to change the intensity of my exercise and not work out like this because I don't want my glucose going high. And it's not meant to be used that way. It is meant to be when I'm eating or I'm not eating and it's going up higher than I would want. How can I change my food or how can I identify these stressors in order to keep it in a healthier range? But if there's an explanation for it going up, we don't want to be worried about that. And so I had a patient who she had a higher A1C, but it was not pre-diabetic yet. And she was just really concerned about it. But one of the we knew some reasons why it would be a little bit higher, and we wanted it actually to be higher because it would help her to gain weight. But unfortunately, her doctor didn't explain this to her, and she got a CGM, and she started then eating so low carb because she thought that like anytime it goes up was bad. So her normal might be at like 75, and if it went to like 105, it was like, oh my gosh, went up 30 points. I need to stop eating that. And she was looking to try to minimize how much it would go up and only eat the foods that led to the most minimal increases. And this actually significantly impacted her health. And it led to some other abnormal lab markers and low energy and high anxiety. And she was always micromanaging it. And she didn't really look forward to eating anymore. So it can kind of, some of us can put us into a bad place if we don't have that healthy mindset of how is this going to teach me some tweaks that I can do in order to have more balanced blood sugar. We're not trying to get the lowest blood sugar that we can get.
Right.
We're going for balance. So that's important. Another one that can be really interesting that you learn when you start using a CGM is that if you have one bad night of sleep, you're going to be more insulin resistant the next day. So your blood sugar is going to spike more with your normal habits. So you might be like, I usually do well with this oatmeal or with this bean pasta. But today it's going up. It's not always because of that food. It could be because you're more insulin resistant, which can happen from poor sleep, being dehydrated, or being really stressed. And so it can teach you a little bit more about your body than just how the food impacts you. If you have a nutritionist, someone like ourselves who can help to interpret that data with you. It's not always face value. And then the last one is that there is going to be a learning curve because when you first get that data, you can't really tell what's your normal. You can't really tell how balanced things are, and you don't know which one of those variables is impacting you, right? So
Yeah.
you might have had poor sleep and you ate more carbs than you normally do. And then it's like, how much or more stress. And so you have to kind of create some theories and then look at data again over the next week and see which one of those variables maintained in the next week and was also associated with your spike to better learn, okay, this is the variable that seems to be making the bigger difference for me. So you
Right.
definitely need like 3 weeks minimum in order to get good actionable data from it that you can use in order to keep your blood sugar healthier. And then you take that and you test it in the next 3 weeks and see that you do have more balanced blood sugar.
Right.
So, yeah, those are some ways that we can use it. So, if someone's listening to this and they're like, okay, it sounds really great. How do I know that it's going to be really helpful for me? What are some conditions that are going to be more likely to show that we don't have balanced blood sugar, that we do need to put more effort into keeping it balanced?
Right. So we don't have to be, again, diabetic to use one of these. Anyone who's even a little insulin resistant, even people who have PCOS, which is insulin resistance of the ovaries, right? So any insulin resistance in the body is going to be helpful for us to kind of see what's going on. If we're having other metabolic dysfunctions, if we're tired, right? And we can't figure out why we're tired. We know it's, we're sleeping okay, but we're still tired all the time. Or we're craving sugar, we're craving salt, we're just craving things. And we know like the body is telling me, what is my body telling me? There's something going on, right? When we have really high stress, it's really helpful to see how that's impacting us. And then athletes or people who are just curious about their health and, really want to have prevention and optimize their health. So there's a lot of reasons we can use this and get a benefit from it.
Yep, that's awesome. I love that. So let's kind of wrap up with the major changes that we can make in order to, like from our lifestyle, in order to balance our blood sugar. So there's kind of four big ones here that we can use for that.
Mhm.
So one of them is meal timing and composition. So it's not just what you eat, that balance of fats, carbs, and protein, low glycemic foods, but it's also when you eat it that will impact your blood sugar. So if you're seeing some abnormalities, think about both of those. If you want to keep your blood sugar more balanced, think about how stress is impacting you. And when you get into that kind of adrenaline or anxious state, and part of that is also your sleep routines and how that's going to make you possibly more insulin resistant the next day. So if you're constantly spiking up, you might need to improve your sleep. The third one is exercise. Exercise will clear glucose from the bloodstream. So, if you're not exercising enough or you're not getting high enough intensity, you might not be clearing it well. Or if you're overtraining, you're exercising too long for too intense, that's a stressor. Blood sugar will go up and stay up more than it normally would with exercise. And then the last one is to be able to use this as a positive reinforcement. Again, it's not about being afraid about when you see a spike and, oh no, that's bad for my body. I just harmed it. It's being able to say, yes, when I exercise and when I sleep well, my blood sugar looks good. So want to do more of those things. So if we use the CGM data to become stressed, we just worsen our blood sugar, right? Counterproductive,
Exactly,
right?
exactly. We wanna find those nice, gentle rolling hills, over time. We want to not look at it and have it doing this all the time, right? We want to avoid that. And so it's a tool. It's not something that's, telling us exactly what's happening in the body. It's a tool to see over time, what changes we make and how we can sustain and allow our body to have those gentle curves.
Yes. So if you have used a CGM, please leave a comment below with what are some of the insights that you got from it. We're always so fascinated to hear what we can learn about our body by using technology. And thank you for listening. Please subscribe if you want more actionable ways to improve your health.